Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I'm honored to be in your company. Thank you, Mr. Barnes, for that kind introduction. And thank you, alumni, family of alumni, teachers, staff, for your continued support of Christian Brothers students. And thank you, members of the Carrera Job Foundation, who have made my story possible. I want to begin by talking science. Now, I don't want to bore you with the details, so I'll keep it to a minimum, but you'll find that it's a common theme throughout my talk tonight. Science is a big part of my life. What I love about science is that it's a puzzle. You're trying to figure things out that have yet to be discovered. Right now, I'm on the path toward becoming a physician and a scientist. Someone who works at the bedside with patients while trying to discover new ways to treat diseases through scientific research. My current research is in the field of genomics, in which I study the 3 billion base pairs that comprise the human genome. Zooming in from the large scale, research now has the ability to alter a single base pair so that we can discover how that alteration leads to large-scale change. I think that's pretty cool, and I apologize for geeking out there. But you can tell that I'm passionate about the work I do. So what does any of this have to do with Christian Brothers High School and the Carrera Job Foundation? As a first recipient of this incredible scholarship, the Carrera Job Foundation is like that single base pair alteration that has led to large-scale transformation. Let me explain. As a teenage kid beginning my high school education, I received a letter in the mail accepting me into Christian Brothers High School on full scholarship. This was not only life-changing news to me, but also for my family. You see, where I come from, education has always been a priority. My mother made every effort to ensure I had the best chance possible. For elementary and middle school, my mother spent hours in the open enrollment process at high-performing public schools outside of my neighborhood, and probably to the annoyance of many secretaries. But because of her fierce advocacy, I had the privilege of attending better resource schools prior to coming to CB. But during middle school, she worried. She worried about my future as we discussed my high school plans. But I remember my mother sobbing with tears of joy and embracing me as we learned of our new opportunity at Christian Brothers. This scholarship gave me the opportunity to earn an invaluable education at CB, but provided me with the basic necessities, such as my first science textbook. That textbook opened my mind to the world of science, and it led me to imagine the possibility of becoming a scientist. That textbook enabled me to be successful in my first high school science class, ultimately inspiring me to take advanced placement biology my senior year, and eventually encouraging me to later declare a major in the sciences. There are many more domino effects from having the scholarship funds to buy something as simple as a textbook, ultimately bringing me to where I am today. But I'll stop there. What's important is how simple a change, like access to a textbook, can have such a large-scale impact. The scholarship is by no means small. It provided me with 4 meaningful years of a Christian Brothers education. Yet, when I look back at my time at Christian Brothers, it was so much more than an academic education. What Christian Brothers provided me with, in addition to rigorous college preparatory academics, was a building of my self-confidence, a formation of my identity, spiritual growth, and a community of supporters and mentors. There isn't enough time to discuss all the wonderful people and and there are many, that had an impact on me during my time at Christian Brothers. But I do want to spend some time talking about key mentors who made a difference. During my freshman year, I had a teacher who, till this day, I tried to emulate. Mr. McClure, an English teacher at CV, was tough. He had high expectations of me and was not afraid to point out my shortcomings as a budding academic. He was also a man of faith, integrity, and grit. He taught me to think critically, to draw my own conclusions, and to back them up with evidence. He gave me the confidence I needed to push through obstacles, personal or professional, that came my way. You see, Mr. McClure was a teacher who not only nurtured students' intellectual growth, he also worked to develop their character. I remember at the end of my first semester, I dropped by Mr. McClure's class to thank him for his dedicated work. He reached out and shook my hand, which back then lacked the firm grasp and sense of confidence. As Mr. McClure strongly shook back, he said, "Sam, from now on, whenever you shake someone's hand, be sure to look them in the eye, use a firm grasp, and acknowledge their presence." Yes, Mr. McClure taught me how to do a proper handshake. But beyond that, built my confidence in the presence of others. Of course, whenever I meet someone new, I offer up a handshake. I always follow Mr. McClure's advice. Sophomore year provided me with another example of a mentor who pushed me in the right direction and affirmed my abilities. You see, what I've so far failed to mention was how ill-prepared I felt for a pre-collegiate education, especially when it came to writing. This lack of confidence and in turn performance in writing changed in Mr. Diaz's class. While we only overlapped for a semester, I'm not sure he realizes the impact he had on my life. Mr. Diaz, like Mr. McClure, was not afraid to make professional personal. It was clear that he loved what he was doing. He often spoke about his own life experiences in the classroom. And at this time, I remember he was a busy father, taking night classes at St. Mary's as he worked on his master's degree. I thought if he could show up to work every day with his passion for teaching, raise a family, and go to school, I could bring the same passion and commitment as a student. It was during my time in his class that I started to develop my voice as a writer. He nurtured my desire to be better, to turn my weaknesses into strengths. When my writing demonstrated new levels of competence, Mr. Diaz did not waver in placing me into the next level up, which meant I had to change classes midway through the year. It was because of Mr. Diaz's recognition in my potential and his warm, caring way of pushing me forward that I was able to excel. Despite no longer being in his class, Mr. Diaz continued to mentor me. I remember the day I shared the happy news with him. I had been accepted to Berkeley. He immediately reached out to a person he knew there who ran an academic program, which I later joined. This program enabled me to form a community of supportive peers and mentors that would be critical to my success at Berkeley. And even now, as I am in the midst of taking a grant writing class in my doctoral program and faced with similar feelings of self-doubt, I think back to the faith Mr. Diaz had in my ability and use that belief in my potential to propel myself forward. A third mentor I had at CD was critical in informing my decision to pursue the fields of medicine and science. During my junior year, I took Mr. Levasseur biology course. This was during a time when I was facing a lot of hardship outside of school. At that time, my family had to move out of our stable home and into my grandparents' house. I remember studying biology class while sharing a small bedroom with my mom. Of course, I couldn't help but worry about my family's well-being, but Mr. Levasseur's class gave me a place where I could escape such hardship and focus my energies on what would soon become my passion, science. Mr. Lavasser's way of connecting with students was unique. He had a way of making learning fun, and despite what troubles I had throughout the day, I always looked forward to coming to science class. Like the previously mentioned mentors, Mr. Lavasser went above and beyond his role as a teacher, as so many teachers do at CB. I remember a phone call he made to my grandparents' house that really illustrated how much my teachers cared about me. Mr. Lavasser had spoken to my grandmother and acknowledged my progress in his class, encouraging me to keep up the good work. His phone call reinforced my potential to succeed in science, and ultimately enabled me to view science as a source of belongingness, passion, and a means to make a difference. Like Mr. McClure and Mr. Diaz, his mentorship did not stop after I moved on from his class. During my Kairos retreat in my senior year, I received a thoughtful letter from Mr. Lavasser, and in the greeting he wrote, "Dear Dr. Regalado." I've held on to this letter and will continue to hold its words close to my heart until the day I finally make that dream of becoming a doctor a reality. These are only a few examples of mentors who have made a lasting impression on me, but there are many others, like Mrs. McCarthy, who, during my time at Berkeley, would invite me back to CB, where we discuss how the semester went, what I was doing, where I was going next, what summer plans I had, and this is usually over coffee. Those were my favorite pastimes. Or Mrs. Verk, who, as my AP biology teacher, would spend time after class discussing the latest breakthroughs in science. I'm sure she had plenty of other things to do than to listen to me. Or Mrs. De Benedetti Emanuel, who, as a service learning counselor, inspired me to broaden my worldview by seeking opportunities to give back. As you can see, through these examples of mentorship, seemingly simple acts, a firm handshake, words of encouragement, a phone call home, or a 3-word greeting in a letter can have profound effects. Just as altering that single base pair in the human genome has the potential to have life-changing consequences. These gestures have ultimately shaped me into the person I am today. Donors like you, all of you out here today, make a huge impact on the lives of students like me. Who knows what path I would have taken had I not been a scholarship recipient. All I know is I am proud and grateful of the path I have taken, and I look forward to seeing where that path leads. Thank you all for providing students like me with the possibility of dreaming big and forging our own paths to success. No one succeeds alone, and you, the donors, are a critical piece of the puzzle. Christian Brothers students and alumni know all too well the motto, enter to learn, leave to serve. Certainly, my CB education has resulted in much learning, expanding my mind, heart, and spirit. My time at Christian Brothers was truly an exceptional learning experience. But as I continue moving forward in life as a CB alum, that call to service is the legacy I hold on to. I am determined to pay forward the significant way in which the support of the Carrera Jaw Foundation has impacted my life. Since leaving Christian Brothers, I have strived to give back to others in hopes I can make ripples of positive change. At Berkeley, I served as an undergraduate science mentor, providing free tutoring in physics to improve the retention of underrepresented minorities in the STEM field. I also created an after-school science program aimed at providing STEM education to elementary school students. Now at the University of Washington, I am a board member of a newly established program at the School of Medicine whose mission is to address the needs of the medically underserved in Seattle. I also serve as mentor to several undergraduate students, some of whom are now applying to graduate school or medical school. As you can see, the education and mentorship I received at Christian Brothers was a critical game changer that led me to where I am today. But I haven't even mentioned one of the biggest life-changing events that being a student at CV made possible, and that is CV is where I met my wife. Flashing forward from the day I received that CV acceptance letter, I graduated in 2007, then attended Berkeley, where I majored in molecular and cell biology. I worked in various labs doing research that interests me, such as trying to figure out the underlying mechanisms of aging to how do we better treat cancer with new therapies. I was recently, lost my place, sorry. I worked in various labs, as mentioned. After that, I was accepted to highly competitive MD, PhD programs, ranging from places like NYU, Yale, USC, and the University of Washington, where I am today. I'm happily living my dream as a future physician scientist in Seattle, along with my wife and CV alum, and hopefully I'll be able to come back to Sacramento and have my future children go to Christian Brothers too. The Career Job Foundation made all of these wonderful things possible. Indeed, success should not be attributed solely to the individual, but rather to the community that lifts the individual up. Today I celebrate my community, the donors, who have given me access to learning, the teachers and mentors who have believed in my potential and fostered my growth, and my family, who has cheered me on along the way. In science, there's always a risk of an experiment failing or succeeding. I thank you for taking a chance on me.